February meeting is our next meeting, and that is on finding balance. So you might wonder at this time of year whether that should be today's meeting, but we are going to talk about midterms today, and we have representatives from each of the core subject areas here, and of course, Cindy Rivera, our head counselor, and Larry Sullivan, the ninth grade principal. So we're so grateful for all the insight they're going to give us. I was just talking with somebody who said that they asked their child if they have midterms, and they said, no, I don't think so. Maybe that's just a sign that we're beating them to the punch, we're getting ahead of it, and we're going to be ready when we have midterms, and we're going to know how to help them best. So thank you to everyone who's going to help us on that front as parents trying to support our kids today. And I'll just turn the time over then to Larry to start, and you're okay then just introducing as we go down the line? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. Hope you're enjoying this holiday season, and I would not stress too much at this point if your ninth graders don't know about exams. It is not like college where they're all done before the holiday break, so most students are still kind of focused on the day-to-day piece, and probably right before the break, they'll start hearing some more specifically from their teachers about, what type of culminating experience they'll have for the first semester, and how they can start getting ready for that. And obviously within each of the domains, teachers will and department chairs will be talking today about sort of what the standard is for that type of performance task or more traditional type of midterm exam. But we are here to help with that, to ease that. For most of your students, this will be the first time they're taking this kind of assessment, and we want them prepared, but we also want them to feel comfortable in seeking out help from their classroom teachers as they go through this. So, okay. Cindy, I think, what do we have first?
Yeah, I'll just start with the basics, and there's a lot we are doing with the kids already as counselors, and to get them to think about how they study best and learn. But these are some things you could do at home in keeping your kids on top of things and positive around this, and not making it out to be as big a deal as they may think it is, or you may think it is. This is the very first time they'll ever take, I think they're taking any kind of cumulative exams, so some of them are nervous about it, but we do what we can to help them be prepared. We think it's a valuable experience, and that's something that certainly happens in college, and we want them to have that kind of practice moving forward. So it's not something we'll take away from them, but a lot of them haven't had a lot of tests because of the pandemic and stuff, that we took a lot of that way. So just to start, help them maintain a positive attitude. We always say a positive mantra. You have this, you can do this, you've studied, you know what you're doing. Just always be supportive of that, and say, don't let them go down that dark hole of like, I'm a failure, I'm going to die. So I shouldn't say that. I'm a failure and life is over kind of things. It's going to be fine. This is a very short time. Once it is done, they can get back to their regular life. But I'm always counseling students, like, it's a short time of your life. Maybe your social life is not going to be what it is. Maybe you're not going away on the Martin Luther King weekend, and maybe you as parents shouldn't plan anything on that long weekend, because that's right in the middle of midterms for them. And you should be providing that quiet space for them. Staying present. Don't let them worry about the future. What can they do today? What they can manage? You will see the schedule later, where they will have 2 exams before the holiday weekend, 4 exams before the holiday weekend and 4 exams after the holiday weekend, with time in between. So they can spread out, and you can create a timeline, help them create a timeline for this. They will be anxious. That's healthy. They should be anxious. It's not something you're going to fix. And I wouldn't worry about that. That if they're not worried, as Patty was saying before with her child, that's a good thing, but they should be a little worried about doing well. So It's normal, you don't need to fix it, they just need to get through it. And we're here, just name it as a normal feeling and understand that. But again, if you can help them make that plan. Making a plan, help them look at, the deadlines, what's due, what's the calendar for them. Then back it up, what do they need to do for now? How much time will it take for them to study for each exam? If they're planning on recopying all their notes for history, which are a lot, that may take some time. So how long will that take them? Put that in the schedule, that we need to recopy notes. Okay, they need to recopy notes. How long will that take? If they want to be in study groups with their friends, for some kids, this is a better way for them to learn, to be in a study group. Plan for that. Is that going to be 3 hours after school? When are you going to do that and get it done and have time for other things? Help them with those kinds of ideas. You'll see with the schedule, the students are out by 12:15 each day. They don't have to be here when they don't have an exam. That leaves the days pretty open for them, some days way more open where they can have some time to study. So you can help them with all of that. Efficient studying, we've just been in all the health classes where we worked with the kids on learning about how they learn best. It was a little bit about the auditory and visual learner, but more about how do you study if that's what you find you are to be. If you're an auditory learner, you probably work better in groups or verbally talk things out and so we taught them that. If you're coming out with that, you may be better at working in groups. If you come out as a visual learner or a reading and writing person, you may be someone who does better working by yourself, really individually, that's where you need to focus. And we worked with them on understanding that and how to change how they study if they're not doing well on assessments. So we've talked to them about it. We're now meeting with our freshmen and their freshman appointments when they show up. We have been emailing home when they don't, so to have you help us get them there. But even in that, we're looking at how they're doing on assessments so far and talking to them about changing what they do if they're not doing well. How are they studying differently? There's active studying and inactive. Many students say, well, I look over my notes. That's how I study, and that's very passive. And so we help them understand that that you're probably not learning much by just looking over your notes. The teachers will talk about their study guides and things, and some kids make their own study guides, and sometimes that's really helpful. So there are ways for them to be more active in how they study. They should also plan for getting extra help. Were they out for an assessment or out for a time where they didn't get the notes directly from class? Do they feel strong? Did they, in a past assessment, do poorly on one section? Do they know that material now, or is that something they need to go back and talk to the teacher about and make sure they understand it if they see that it's going to be on the midterm? So that's all active ways of really doing that. Many of the teachers are offering extra help and study sessions, even if they feel like they got it. A lot of times those sessions are really helpful because someone else has a question that they didn't realize they didn't know that, and someone else brings something up, and they go, oh yeah, I didn't know that either. Let's talk it through. So they shouldn't just blow them off because they think they have it. It's something they can really do. Tips for home: keeping it calm, not having a big family gathering in the middle of all of it, not going away. These are things that really help the kids to understand that you think this is serious as well, and that you take the time to do some studying, to stay with their routines, and keep it appropriate for them. They will need breaks. They can't study 24/7. But they should be short, and they should be fine because they will be preparing as we go along. It does, as in the last few years, we've made the the exam only counts no more than 10% of the semester grade, so it can't impact their final grade very much. So just keep that in mind. It's okay. It's first semester, freshman year. They'll get better at it. It's the first time they're doing it. I'm always telling kids it really doesn't impact anything much after the midterms. They will get better at what they don't, how they've studied, and this is all part of the learning process. So then, after exams, it is a good opportunity to take time to reflect on what didn't go well and make sure they're learning the new skills. That's what I think I said it all.
Thanks, Cindy. I believe first up, we have with us Evan Remley, who is our chair of the English department. If it helps create some sympathy for him, he is also the parent of a 9th grade boy in another school system. He feels your pain.
Exams. It's the first I'm hearing of this. Okay. Can everyone hear me? So, yes, I'm Evan Remley. I'm the chair of the English department. So I'll just kind of give you a quick flyby on English exams. So they're skill-based and non-cumulative with content. So it's not going to be like a multiple choice on books we covered that year. It's not the format of our exams. And generally over the years, it's been one of our core areas of reading, research, or writing. You finally saw Shakespeare. He's a scamp, isn't he? Really? That guy. All right. So we don't have standard exams, but we, in the past few years, we've been trying to work closely on grade level teams, aligning exams. So like for instance, AP Lit and AP Lang do like shortened versions of that. And then this year, I've been working with the 9th grade team to do like a reader-writer response. So that would be like a passage or a short story and 1 or 2 open questions kind of delving into it. So a pretty standard kind of like English assessment. But to Cindy's point, I think exam is maybe like it's this final thing. It's one domain of the curriculum that we're measuring. We're just doing it during the midterm, and we'll probably report it out there. But I wouldn't necessarily look at it as like, hey, this is how good of a writer or reader you are. It's just a one particular assessment. So just try and frame it that way for you. So click the right tab. Do you have the clicker? I nervous. There you go. I stayed in the Shakespeare theme of the slides, so I thought that was kind of, the existential moment. Poor York. It's very exam. It was either that or Kurtz from Heart of Darkness. I went this route. So the teacher will explain. Like I said, I've been working with the 9th grade team. I think we're all on the same page with it, but I've been wrong about that before. Where they'll kind of explain, hey, here's what to expect for the exam period. This is what we'll be doing. And if your child is particularly nervous, they can always ask for a practice response or some prep on that. I think the plan, this is a kind of a staple of English classrooms, so hopefully they feel pretty well prepared. And that's it.
Questions?
Right? Yeah, any questions?
Practice response exercises.
Pardon? Oh, the teacher will, I think the teacher will sort of set them up, and that's the goal, is that we'll do at least one. And they've been doing them throughout the semester as well, so should be well prepared in theory. Yeah, that's the hope.
Evan, would you suggest that one thing students could do is go back through some of their journal type responses they've written on literature, see what the teacher's pointing out to them as areas for growth?
Yeah, and I think that's always a good thing, just kind of reviewing some of these reader-writer responses. Generally with students, it's not really the writing that's the problem, it's the reading underpinning their response, like they're just misreading or misunderstanding the story or the passage. So a lot of times sort of sharpening those skills, looking for a pattern, understanding how an idea evolves from beginning, middle, and end, and that's sort of, I think, kind of reviewing some responses to literature you've done in the past can always be a good starting point. So that's, like I said, hopefully they've been doing these since, first grade, so hopefully they feel good about it. But then again, I've been wrong about that in the past too. So, all right, thank you guys.
Good. Okay. Next up, we have Terrence Timmy. He is one of our 9th grade science teachers.
Can everybody hear me? All right, so our midterms across the board from geophysical, honors geophysical, bio, honors bio, are all going to be cumulative. So they're going to be working on science skills that we've been working on in class, the ideas that we've been talking about in class, and the concepts as well. So there should be no surprises. And the format is going to be similar to the assessments that they've already taken. And it's going to be 10% of the semester grade all across the board. So they're kind of uniform in that way. So resources that they've had, I've talked to some of my students already, like the guided notes that they use, notes that they've taken on their own. Slideshows are all posted by every single class, so those are resources that they can use on Schoology. Study guides have not gone out for the midterm yet, but I'm told for most people, and me myself, I'm going to be giving it after break, so they don't have to stress over trying to get this study guide done over break. It doesn't really help in terms of stress. And there's also objective sheets as well, so vocab that they need to know, excuse me, and other like concepts that they really want to hammer home before it's time to take their midterm. I can give out a study guide now, but that would be something that if a student asked me for or emailed me about, I would get that to them before break. But there really is no rush on that. There's plenty of time. We're going to give time in class for stuff like that. And we'll also give opportunities for them to look over their previous assessments to see what they did poorly on, see how they can kind of improve leading up to that. I think that's very helpful, but students have to kind of be proactive in trying to seek out their teacher for looking at their assessments. And lastly, every class is different, so teachers are going to give different tips for studying. I know honors likes concept maps. I personally like the Feynman technique, which talks about just them teaching each other, so kind of peer learning. So once you can become a teacher of what you're learning, you can kind of learn it a little bit better for yourself. So just different techniques that they can use and just taking it little by little, a little piece at a time and just kind of breaking it down and chunking it. So yeah, that's kind of what we got. If you have any questions. Yes.
After the break, will there be new concepts introduced in bio or honors bio, or will it be focused on studying what has already been taught?
That's a great question. I can't speak for honors bio. You would have to email the teacher, but for bio, I do believe that there's still a little bit more after break, but we aren't testing until after break, and then it'll go right into the midterms. Anybody else?
We do ask the teachers, we've set dates, at which point they stop introducing new material and testing kids in the new year. I can't remember exactly, so one of you guys.
So yeah, it's it's the Wednesday.
The Monday.
I think the Monday was the last test day of the quarter.
After the break, the first Monday after the break.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Terrence. And next up, we have Dr. Kemen Hawley, who is our District Administrator for World Languages and our FLES program.
Hi, good morning. My name is Dr. Kemen Hawley, and I'm the Director K-12 of World Languages and Multilingual Learners. And I just I can't state enough, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, wow, as a ninth grader, I wish I had this type of experience, and my parents had this type of experience. So I can't thank the PFA enough and my colleagues for this amazing just a presentation. Even if it's just a couple of minutes, it just helps create ease and, lower anxiety, that toxic stress for our students. That's just not good, as Ms. Rivera was saying. And, in the world language world, and I would say in all disciplines really, that toxic stress that students might experience really creates an effective filter. And that's a language acquisition term, but in kind of layman's terms, we would say it's like the best goalie ever in your brain, just blocking all types of information. So nothing can come in and nothing can come out. And that's totally counterproductive during this time of year. And in terms of world languages, if I heard a student in world language saying like, oh, we don't have a midterm exam, that wouldn't surprise me. Because in world languages, it's kind of different. We kind of run business as usual. So the way our units of studies work is, the students go through a language learning journey of acquiring vocabulary, grammar, cultural concepts. Then the teachers create, tasks and learning experiences where they could experiment with that acquired knowledge. And then we ask them to transfer that meaning and that acquisition of knowledge into new concepts to see if, new context, to see if they truly understand and they could use the language in real world experiences. So at the end of every unit, we have either a unit exam or a performance task. And both of these types of assessment tools we use for all of our courses, and they're assured experiences. So for example, if Spanish level 2 teachers decide on the unit exam, then all the courses are going to have that unit exam. So your child is not going to have a different experience. Like one Spanish 2 class is not going to have a performance task per se, and the other one is going to have a unit exam. They're all going to have the same experience. And why both of these experiences are important in world languages is because our ultimate goal is, obviously, we want our students to be lifelong users and consumers of the language of study, but we also want them to strive for the seal of biliteracy, which is a designation not only on the transcript, but they could use on their resumes. They could report out to colleges and universities that they've achieved a certain level of proficiency, which is intermediate mid in English and at least another language, which is quite amazing. So these unit exams and these performance tests, they incorporate the 3 elements of our approach to world language teaching, which is the first being achievement, which many of us growing up, maybe we had world language teachers that were very heavy in the achievement, which was, the memorizations of language elements, of grammar and vocabulary, and, which is still part of language learning. But we also incorporate what's called performance, where we ask our students to use language within the safety of the classroom, but we create these real world contexts. So that could be what I mentioned as a performance task. So for example, a performance task in our unit of You Are What You Wear, the students have to pretend that they're welcoming a student who doesn't speak English, who speaks that language, and just telling them, giving them like a little fun guide as to, what students wear in New Canaan to make them feel welcome. So, that's kind of like a real world experience. And the unit exams prepare them for experiences like the tests they'll have to take to show their biliteracy, whether it's the apple in French, French, Spanish, and Mandarin, or the Alira in Latin. And these are assessment tools that we use to get that hard data on their proficiency, so that we could show colleges and universities that they've attained their proficiency. It also prepares them for placement tests that they might have to take. And these are more kind of the traditional experiences, but they still have performance elements to it. For example, it might be a multiple choice, but they're listening to a podcast, for example, and they want to make sure, teachers want to make sure that they can understand it. They're testing their interpretive listening skills there. So it's either one of those 2 experiences, which for them they're already used to, and students receive study materials as identified by their teacher. They're accessible on paper or online, and we accommodate students. And as I said, we're proficiency-based programming in world languages, so we're moving away from those traditional midterms, which is why students should be feeling pretty confident. And then I just explained the journey of each unit of study, and the grade factors into the quarter 2 grade, so it's not a midterm grade. So once again, we don't have that traditional midterm experience because we're about either that unit exam that they're going to have or the performance task.
Questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. All right. We're lucky to have Mike Forcucci, our Social Studies Department Chair, with us.
Good morning, Mike Forcucci, speaking for the Social Studies Department. Much like English, our exams are focused more heavily on the skills of social studies than kind of trying to memorize all the content that we've covered in the first semester. Those skills, what we call historical thinking skills, emphasize the larger themes of the units of study that we've been following rather than trying to, again, memorize every specific detail. For freshmen then, an example of that might be the influence of religion on societal development, how religion kind of informs government, informs social structure, informs economic patterns and such. All these things should be things that teachers have been focusing on heavily and consistently throughout each unit. Of course, in the social studies, there is a degree to which retaining the content helps. So you'll get study guides for that. Teachers are hopefully thoughtful to not be overwhelming, to kind of pick and choose core ideas that help to bear out those themes. And then the way in which they kind of express that they understand these things is really through reading and writing, basic literacy skills that we're also working on. Teachers will be asking students to write written responses, usually formal essays, based on primary source documents that kind of give light to the history we've been studying. Of course, this is ancient history, which can be a challenge to make sense of. So again, in preparing, hopefully students can connect those core themes, those overarching ideas that have been evident in each unit, to various sources, whether they're reading an Egyptian pharaoh writing about a great victory. They might not need to know all the details of the war and the causes of the war and all that, but more how that affects or how that reflects, the type of government they had and the way in which they understood the world and how that shaped their society. Some teachers might also give short answer questions. As far as objective questions, ones that are purely content-based, that will vary based on teacher. Some teachers like to include the most recent content for content-specific questions. That might be in instances where they don't give a traditional test to end a unit and they just kind of work that into the the midterm. But you'll get clear word and communication of that through study guides and through review and preparation and such. I think, as far as how to prepare, really just use the study guides that the teachers give. We don't give a standardized midterm so that teachers can tailor their midterm to the class that they've been teaching. And of course, we all follow the same curriculum, but we pick and choose different areas that we like to delve into. Sometimes the class dictates the direction we go and what they find interesting. And then the midterm hopefully reflects that. And they'll all get study guides after Christmas break. We tend to think is preferable. Just because the extended amount of time, if we gave it before, I'm not sure it would be helpful. But really the best advice is follow that study guide. Use the course materials to study and prepare. There's a temptation to use kind of pre-prepared study guides, Quizlet, and all sorts of stuff on the internet, which might seem expedient to them because it's pre-prepared and looks nice, but oftentimes it doesn't reflect what the teacher was actually teaching and what that specific course was following. And it might push their attention elsewhere, and oftentimes it results in them studying more than they have to and trying to retain more than they have to and trying to make sense of things that might not have been mentioned in class. We're lucky to have Schoology and the digital resources, so all the work that they've done in their class is available to them. Hopefully they did it well and they can refer to the work they did already to kind of refresh their memory, or they might find that they got to go back to the original assignment and maybe touch up what they've done. But I think the best advice we could give is to use the course resources to prepare and try to avoid, going off into the wild on the internet and finding pre-prepared stuff. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And last but not least, our math chair, Becky Pavia, will share some ideas for preparation in the range of classes that are offered in math.
So I'd just like to begin with kind of a review of the types of questions that students might see just on a regular unit test in class and on midterms and finals and such. So we begin with the fluency, which is just, here's an equation, can you do the problem? Can I graph the equation? They're more straightforward. They might become more complex with different numbers, but it's essentially just, how efficiently and correctly can you solve a problem? Then we like to basically see, can students take that knowledge and apply it to new situations? So that's where we get into the application and conceptual understanding. So if your student comes home and they're like, the test wasn't accurate to what we studied in class, chances are those are the questions that they're finding difficult. They're not making that leap between the basic just, content, and either I understand how the equations might be working in the background, or here's a situation that maybe we didn't exactly study, but I can apply the aspects of this type of function to a situation. So one of the things that we stress, which is challenging for students, especially freshmen, is this metacognition piece. So what exactly are you not understanding? Sometimes kids come for extra help and they're just like, I need help on the whole thing. So it's, really kind of speaking to what Mrs. Rivera was talking about. What is your learning style? Where are you making mistakes? Are they calculation mistakes? Are they, are they the word problems? This question is a little bit new. How do I practice this? And what I find is that students focus on the application and the conceptual problems because they're the hardest. But if they don't have that solid skill foundation, then they're really not they're gonna struggle to make that leap to those tougher, more rigorous problems. So a lot of times that skill is really what they should focus on to start with, and then move on. So as far as midterms go, our midterms are more the fluency and I would say the application with a little bit of the concept. They're not as tough as what a student might see for a unit exam in class because they're covering a breadth of knowledge. So it's really just the foundation of the course, and it's one of the things that we will use when we talk about course placement coming up shortly, just to see how well they can demonstrate their learning. But it's not going to have a lot of those really tough questions on it, and that's across the board, like the M2s, 3s, or 4s. You want to?
Sure.
So preparing for the test really begins with way beforehand. So, in class, are we actively listening? Or are we just going through the motions? Are we, okay, I'm doing this question. Did I get it right? Did I make any mistakes? It's really getting, again, that metacognition piece of having students identify where they're tripping up. A lot of times I'll recommend to students just go for extra help, even if you think you don't need it. Go and ask one question on your homework. So before it snowballs, or before you have a big quiz or a test and now you're stressed and you're like trying to manage it all, before it gets away from you, really make sure that you're kind of like managing along the way. Teachers will be handing out midterm review packets, so we kind of go the other direction. We hand them out before break as an option. Some students, we tell students, like, don't work on this unless you want to. We have 8 days basically when we get back from break. So to prepare for, at least 4 periods, like right away, we're wrapping up the second quarter. Like sometimes it is overwhelming, and that, it's really important to map out that calendar to see what a day might look like leading up to midterms and how much time students will have to prepare. And again, to Mrs. Rivera's point, students who just kind of look at their notes or look at problems and say, oh yeah, I understand what happened here, those are the students who will struggle on the test. Like we want them to study for the test the same way they would take the test. So if I'm not giving them worked out solution, and I'm not asking them, did the student do this correctly, then that's not really a good way to study. They should really recreate the problems. I always recommend they can take homework, they can take old quizzes, they can take old tests, and just rewrite the problems on a blank piece of paper and see if you can do them all over again. Khan Academy is a good resource. There's some online things, but depending on what they're searching for, sometimes the math gets really big. Like if they put in, this probably doesn't apply to most ninth graders, but if they put in like trig functions, like trig goes all the way into calculus. So sometimes it's hard to like focus in on like what actually like we're asking them to do in their classes. So I would recommend going back through Schoology, going back, teachers have notes. Sometimes, to those visual learners, maybe rereading the notes on a regular basis is going to be helpful just to keep the vocabulary and the content fresh. That repetition might be helpful for some kids. I think that's, want to go next. All right, so as far as preparing for any math assessment, we want students to have, good study habits leading into the assessment. There's some teachers out there who will recommend that students do the review packets 3 times. So not saying everyone has time to do that or that's a realistic expectation for every assessment, but the idea is that we do it the first time and then we go back and we check our answers. Okay, what did I get wrong? Now where do I need to focus my understanding? Now I do those questions again, like did I get them right? Maybe I don't need to do the whole packet, but this one particular section over here was tough. And then the third time you redo the whole thing. Okay, now did I get it right? Like, do I have a good understanding of everything? So again, that calendar is super important, especially when it comes to having the time to do all of that. But I think the key is you really want to mimic how the test is going to be taken. So having them do the questions from scratch and really analyzing, well, did I get the right answer? Well, why not? And I think that's a hard piece for freshmen to kind of wrap their head around, to really delve into their learning to figure out like what are they doing wrong so they can fix it. And then, and these are just some basic good tips. So, if they've prepared ahead of time, like don't stress the night before. Staying up late to like cram for your math test is probably going to be counterproductive. You're going to wake up tired. The information is going to be all jumbled in your head. And I really think, kids focus on like the grade. Just really, do they try their best? Like if they tried their best and they put in their effort, we can analyze, maybe there's some ways to improve it, but really rewarding that process of studying rather than just focusing on the grade at the end. So any questions? All right. Hopefully you're not as stressed as your students are after hearing us.
Thank you, Becky. And just to kind of go over our exam schedule with you, I know Cindy referenced this earlier. There is a different feeling and a different vibe in the building over exams, and we've intentionally tried to create a schedule that has some breaks in it between the exams. So basically, we kind of think of it starting on Wednesday, January 10th. That will be a day where periods 1 through 4 meet, as usual, and then we break out and do the periods 1 through 4 exams at the end of that week. So on the 11th, there'll be periods 1 and period 2, and then on the 12th, periods 3 and periods 4. And you'll notice that we start a little bit into the day, so if a kid wants to come early and perhaps see a teacher beforehand, has a last-minute question, so the exams will start at 8:15 and go to 9:45, and then you'll see there's an hour's cushion between the two exams too. We know we have students here who perhaps require some extra time on exams, so we try to build it into the time there. But we also offer other things in the middle of exams for kids. So there are a lot of stress-relieving activities going on. We have therapy dogs that come in. We have open time in the gym. We have sometimes people want to go and do puzzles, just something to take their mind out of the exam for a few minutes. So you'll see a lot of activities that go on between exams, and also the PFA very generously provides lots of good snacks for kids during that time as well. And then the exams wrap up after the second session of the morning around 12:15 or so. And again, if a student needs to and has extra time on an exam, they may stay a little later. The buses do continue to run at the regular time. It just becomes very difficult to run a separate bus run at 12:30. So if your student is bus reliant, they certainly can stay here till 2:30, and perhaps that's a time to get extra help from a teacher. The other way we use...
Library's open during
Yeah,
that time?
library is open, absolutely.
study.
Yep. The other way we use the afternoon time is that if a student misses an exam, perhaps in the morning, they could make it up during one of the afternoons. Again, that's sort of individually arranged by teacher. Then we go into the Martin Luther King weekend, and you'll notice when we come back from that, we don't have them running right to an exam. Now we're going to have a day when the periods 5 through 8 meet. So that'll be a time, again, last minute with those teachers of here's your focus, or here are questions you might have, and you can connect with the teacher. Then they'll go in and do the 5-6 on the 17th, the 7-8 on the 18th, and then, why do I have, I'm sorry, Friday should be the 19th, right? I made an error down there. So Friday, then the 19th, will be really the last day of the first semester, and students will meet all classes. So we'll have shorter classes that meet. It'll be an opportunity for students to review their exam, And in a case where they're changing a class, and that for ninth graders is most likely their electives, it's just sort of a final opportunity to close out the class with the teacher. Most of their classes in English and social studies, math and science are going to continue year-long with the same teacher. But then when we come back on Monday the 22nd would be then our first day of the second semester. But again, for ninth graders, you shouldn't see significant changes in their schedule other than their electives, and they'll switch from health to PE and things of that sort. The other thing I would say is there may be some classes that will not have exams. As an example, health does not give an exam. They'll have completed the coursework there. They also do not need to come in for a period where they don't have an exam. So if your child, has health first period and nothing else at that time, they don't have to come in on the 11th until 10:45 or so. Obviously, we'd like them here earlier just to make sure.
Yes.
Did I miss anything, Cindy?
No, I think, do you have question? Oops, question.
Yes.
Yeah, for the science that meets like a period and then like a half a period?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Good question, thank you. So it will be the full block is when the exam will be scheduled, not for the half block.
And that half block, they just have.
The half block they would have as free time, study time, something of that sort. Yep.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you, good question. Other question?
We do find it's a nice week where kids do decompress as the week goes on, because some days are very quiet for them, or they can see the first few days, like the first few days are really stressful or tense, but once they get through it, you can see them calming, because they are short days. They do all come in their pajamas and look awful. It's good. The counselors are certainly available if they're melting down or having a tough time. And if you have any particular concerns, please get in touch with the counselor, around working out how to do it. Sometimes kids have two in a row on a day. That's one back-to-back, two exams back-to-back. They're very worried about. And as long as they pre-plan ahead of time, not day of, that possibly could rearrange with the teacher to do it a different day or something. But some kids like, no, let's just get through it. I want to be with my class. I want to be there when the teacher, with the teacher and at my class to get through it. So it's rare that kids change things, but there are circumstances where kids have to make a change. But we want to do that well in advance. So good with your calendar planning with them. Any other questions? Hello, Mr. Egan. We're de-stressing.
Can't sneak into a room.
And this will be the man that your children will be fighting to try to get near the dogs with, because Bill monopolizes the therapy dogs when they're here. So.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions?
Yes.
Is there any standard for when teachers should have grades in for the other parts of the semester?
So in general, what we ask teachers to try to do is to meet at the outside a 2-week deadline between the time they give an assessment and it's reported back to students. Again, I think most of the time, I'm a recovering English teacher, so when I collected 50 or 60 essays at a shot, it would take me a while to get through those, and I would always try to set that as my benchmark as well. Certainly, there are some types of assessments that are easier to turn around. If a teacher is using multiple choice Scantron type tests, that they might get that back sooner. But in general, that's our goal, that within 2 weeks, kids and families know. Okay. Good questions. Well, thank you all for being here again. Hopefully you found this helpful. I will correct that date error on the very last line and change that to the 19th. And certainly, as Cindy said, please reach out to your students' teachers if you are seeing a concern in a particular class, or to their school counselor if you are seeing a lot of stress with your child, and we'll find a way to help them. All right, thank you.